Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. Today it is my great pleasure to reintroduce one of the founding fathers, I guess, of FinTech Focus TV. It's been a while since he's been on the show, but I've been watching him a lot over recent weeks and months as the Zone has continued to grow and do some great things. But it's been a while. Thomas Kim, how are you?
I'm doing great, Toby. Thanks so much for taking the time to have me on. I'm so excited about this.
Oh, I loved it. I loved chatting to you last time. It's great to have you back on the show. New company this time, Zone & Co. Loads to talk about. Let's do an introduction. Give us a little bit of your bio first and foremost for people who can't remember to the founding episode 5 or 6 years ago, and then give us a little bit of an update on what you've been doing in Zone, if you would.
Yeah, that'd be great. And so I'm currently the CEO of Zone, obviously. And as Toby mentioned earlier, the last time we had this conversation was when I was the CEO of Infusion, and in similar sort of fashion, we're in a moment where the world is changing, right? I think back then it was COVID, and the world was changing back then, and we had to really evaluate and interrogate, so to speak, businesses, how they were run, and what was relevant and what was not. And I find myself a CEO of another company where the same transition is happening. Instead, it's not, horrible things happening in the world from a health perspective, but it's AI and how AI and the agentic revolution is basically changing the world and how we perceive it. And so CEO of Zone, we're doing a lot of cool stuff, particularly around introducing really intelligence or agents that sit on top of ERPs, and in our instance, particularly the NetSuite ERP. And so we're one of the only folks that have built as a native NetSuite sort of technology partner. We've built a very special harness that sits on top of NetSuite, the system of record, that does what we need in terms of that foundation needed to read, to standardize, and to write to and from the ERP, so that the system of record that folks have been using is augmented with what we call the system of agency that we provide to those customers who rely on that data and that workflow to now do more. Specifically around the office of the CFO, finance teams, and operations. Given sort of this agentic rise, they need to figure out how to be more efficient, how to be smarter, how to do their jobs better. How are they going to interact with all this new technology and capabilities that they kind of haven't figured out fully yet themselves? And so with Zone, we're right in the middle of that, and we're having a lot of fun with it.
It definitely sounds it. And I think I mentioned in the intro that I've been watching your sort of LinkedIn. I'm a big LinkedIn user. I'm a big LinkedIn fan, and there's obviously a lot of noise to get through. But over this year in particular, I think there's been more and more stuff that you've been putting out, which is sort of taking us on this journey that you've just described there. And I think probably the last 2 years of FinTech Focus TV has been dominated by conversations about AI at various different levels of adoption and such like. And there was one post that you put out a couple of weeks ago that particularly caught my eye, where you talked about the sort of two camps on AI, and both of them are wrong. So on one of them you talked about the maximalists, on one of them you talked about the skeptics, both of those being wrong about where it can go. And I think when you just touched there about how you are working with the CFOs to basically allow them to do their jobs better, that to me is where it's not all in, or it's never going to, it's coming here and it's taking our jobs. It's how can we augment human performance? And I think you put it really well in that piece. So I'm going to ask you to sort of go back into your memory and bring out the sort of commentary that you put over it there, and basically just go through that, because I think it really resonated with me particularly, because this maximalist piece where you've got the absolute purist and it's going to take on everything and we can change the world. I remember a conversation I had in New York only a couple of months ago where someone was saying, right, this is the end of jobs as we know it. It's the end of, we're going to make everything agentic. We've got someone in who's going to take out as many people as possible. Then you saw people on the other side of the conversation in the same week that I was having, where it was, this in finance it can't go anywhere because finance has to be approximately right isn't correct and blah blah blah. So you've got these two different worlds, and you put yourself right in the middle of that. So expand on it a little bit more and give me your thoughts on this because I think it's a great conversation.
It's kind of funny because I mean, just to go off on a tangent, I've never really been much of a, not like you. I mean, I'm an amateur, and so I've never been one to do a lot of posts and put my thoughts out there in that way. And it really just kind of bothered me. When the notion of SaaS apocalypse hit, and when you know AI just became the the thing that just sucked the oxygen out of the room. It just
Yeah.
really bothered me how yet again we find ourselves in another sort of technological shift, perhaps the greatest technological shift that we've gone through to date, outside of maybe the internet. But I guess there could be an argument which one was more important. But it just really bothered me how yet again we're bastardizing the
Mm.
terminologies and these positions based on what is the fear that people are walking around with, or what is the most popular thing to talk about in order to be so, I don't know, controversial, right? Or right. And so it just really bothered me how it was, this one camp or the other type of situation, while at the same time, generally speaking, practitioners find themselves in another situation where they don't really kind of know which way to go or which way to be. But there's all of this noise, right? Swimming around that makes it harder for folks to figure out, how am I going to benefit from this technology without being inundated with what people are telling me it should be, or won't be, or it was just a lot. And so I almost felt compelled to sort of just level set it in my small universe kind of a way, right? Where it was like, I don't think anyone's going to read it. And I'm pretty sure
I found it.
you're probably one of the only people who did. It was just sort of like, listen, it's not one or the other. It's not, AI and agents isn't just going to come in and just obliterate human beings and jobs, at least not in companies, the office of the CFO, operations. And it's also not going to be nothing, right? It's not going to be a
Mm.
fad that disappears, right? Because it's the talk of it's the talk of the world, so to speak. And so really, commonsensically, it's somewhere in that middle where it's amazing technology that really is going to augment human beings' ability to process, automate, go do, eliminate some errors, just, have a digital team that is accessible to these professionals who ultimately need to do their jobs better, faster, and more meaningfully. And I
Mm.
think that some rote exercises that, quite frankly, we shouldn't be doing because they take a lot of time, and can be eliminated, will most likely get eliminated. But that doesn't necessarily mean that accountants will be out of jobs, and CFOs and controllers will be out of jobs, and operators will be out of jobs. It just means that they have better capabilities available to them on a daily, minute by minute basis, to basically go do what they need to do, that their management teams are entrusting them to go do. And I find it that, if we could just level set everything and bring it down, we can stop thinking about sort of the noise and parsing through it and thinking about, what are my problems, right?
Mm.
I just spoke with a CFO a couple of days ago, and we were having a great conversation, and we were just talking about, what are the things that really take up a lot of her and her team's time, and a simple thing like forecasting, right? And cash forecasting, and scenario planning as a part of that, right? You come up with a cash forecast based on all of this information that you have. You got to pull the data out. You got to, you put it into a model, and then you got to apply some intuition in terms of, what does it all mean? And then you have sort of this bid-ask spread of, okay, I think we're going to land somewhere around here, right, over the course of the next month or quarter or the year. And all of that exercise takes me, lots of hours and lots of people across departments to basically at least give me the information to go, now let me go do this. And then if that wasn't cumbersome enough, I don't necessarily know any forecast that I've done where it's actually landed precisely the way that we said it would, because, business happens. And so this whole notion of scenario planning becomes like this big deal. And so, I planned on having $100 million of cash, right? Based on this amount of book of business and, the DSOs that we have, and the amount of revenue that we're bringing in during the course of a month or a quarter. And when all of a sudden, I don't get paid on something that we were supposed to get, I don't know, $1 million of something for, and the cash didn't come in, that impacts my cash forecasting. And so now I need to do scenario planning to figure out, okay, what do I need to change in order to hit my number, remotely close to where I said it would. And so this relatively straightforward thing that every single company in the world goes through, right, is this really manual. Some pieces of it is rote, others are very, highly tuned to the business, require a lot of insight and intelligence that you have to glean from, macros and, Excel spreadsheets and what have you. And I was like, this is a perfect example of something right in the middle, right? And so we iterated with customers on, an agentic forecasting, agent that will do a lot of this work for you. And then we augmented that in that same iterative approach, a scenario planning agent that will literally say, it says, okay, you're trying to achieve $100 million cash forecast. You're behind in the current pace that you're going by, $250 million. Let me scan your book of business and your projected revenues that are supposed to come in across your many thousands of customers. And if that one thing isn't coming in, you might want to do this, and that. You might want to, start, sending out emails to accelerate, payment from this class of customers, all trying to achieve that goal, all working alongside of you, right? While at the same time, you're not losing your job because you need to go do that. Now these things are sitting next to you to go help you figure out how to achieve your goals. And that's what I meant by sort of that maximalist and that, that sort of spectrum of things, where if we could all just approach this in a common collected manner on how we can do our jobs better, these tools and these capabilities are going to be massively important to being able to do that. It just doesn't need to be one or the other. I don't mean to go off on a tangent, but that was sort of
not at all. The train of thought with it all. It's
right.
And I loved it because it's exactly where I've been thinking with it all, and it sort of chimed a lot with me as to what and where things are going and what it actually means, to be utilising this and the opportunity. And there's so much to unpack with what you've just said. I mean, I think you mentioned there that I've been speaking about faster, better, and stronger. And if you can do your job with all of those and become better because of it, that's exactly what we're here to be able to do. And I think there's this really interesting, I've said this on the show a few times over recent months, that I think that we've become, over the last 2 decades in particular, there's been a lot of pressure on businesses for numerous different reasons. And that pressure has usually manifested itself in how can we reduce. And at a certain stage, after 2 decades of reduction, you have to say, right, operating costs continue to go higher and profit margins are getting squeezed at various different levels. So there's only so much you can reduce up until that sort of stage. So the other side of it then has to go about how can you increase productivity. And I think the companies who are really getting this movement are recognizing that how can we make everyone better? And if we can make everyone better, we can get more per head from maximizing all of that side of things and make it a much better play. And that to me is the logical piece about the and why I'm so excited about this opportunity. And the other thing you just mentioned there was about the idea of solving problems and how people are looking at this and saying, right, we can actually sit here now and iterate and move with people's problems have never been the same. And legacy technology, I think the problem with legacy tech is this is how we do it, and you have to, we've solved a problem here, and it can't necessarily evolve at various stages. Right now, we can look at problems real time, and I know you do a lot of this with your customers, and say, let's get their input, let's get this sort of thing, and make immediate adjustments to all that sort of thing to make their life better. That increases that productivity, and that's the thing that I think is incredibly exciting about this movement at the moment, right?
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I'll speak with a customer or a prospect, and you know me, I'm interested in positioning, technology to solve problems at the core, not at the proximate level. Let's like, what are your core problems that really are preventing your business to grow? And what's interesting across every company that I've spoken to, across different industries, even in capital markets and outside of capital markets, the universal thing that keeps coming back is how do I do more with less? How do I improve my profitability? Why does my business require such complications? Why is my technology or that tech debt that I've created so brittle where if I try and fix a workflow over here, a workflow over here breaks, right? If I rip out a piece of code or technology or a vendor over here, more times than not, it's from when they built something themselves because the things weren't available. What happens why is it that when I rip that out or contemplate ripping that out, the whole thing just crumbles, right? Because I built on top of something that was never designed to do what I needed to do as my business grew, right?
Mm,
And so there is like this reoccurring theme of capabilities around technology that has really gotten in the way of teams' abilities to participate in driving growth, right,
mm,
in their
mm,
business. And I think that, and I said it in earlier, it's not here or there. It's on the agents that are coming out, the capabilities are changing the world. I mean, it's
mm,
changing how we build software. It's changing how we deliver it. It's changing how we interact with our customers. It's changing the pace at which these things are coming out. And companies, and we're not, unique in that way or divorced from that reality where we've had to transform our organization that has been growing, continues to grow remarkably. But it's kind of grown in that legacy way, right? That
mm,
SaaS, way that was not that long ago, not really, where SaaS and remember data centers came out, they were all like replacing on-prem capabilities. Now we're dating ourselves, right? And so here we are again, and I think companies, like us, are transforming, how they want to receive technology, how they want to utilize it, how it's developed, and I think it's a really exciting time for the world to kind of
Totally. And you can see that with every founder and every entrepreneur and every leader that I'm speaking to. There's just this unbridled passion and excitement about what the potential is and what problems that can be solved. I don't think I've ever seen. I've done this for 26 years, and I don't think I've seen people who are as genuinely excited when they start to talk about the product and the potential. And I love to see it. I think it's just such an exciting phase. And I think it's also this sort of evolution. You touched on it again there, where you were talking about the whole concept and the frustration of SaaS apocalypse and this sort of narrow-mindedness of here's a great headline that can talk about the destruction of an industry and how everything's going to be changing. it always felt like evolution of me and an opportunity to do it. And as I said before, you're not the first person I've heard who have sort of lent in from a very SaaS-based background into sort of working out what agentic can look like, and actually then getting really excited about the benefits you can talk about that with. You know, you mentioned before 6,000 customers all over the globe who are now starting to benefit and giving you this unique opportunity to get real-time feedback and data and everything else like that from it. This evolution of moving from a, you know, I guess a traditional SaaS business into a business there that's agentic led. Talk to us about that evolution and how that sort of developed, and what the sort of fears and concerns were, and the journey that you've been on to now recognizing that this can be a really exciting future for, you know, traditional SaaS based businesses, about how they evolve with it as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the best way I think to answer that is to go a little bit backwards into that. And what I mean by that is, if you zoom out and you look at, okay, what are the components that I actually need in order to make agents, skills, workflows, whatever you want to call it, impactful at a practical level? Not a
Yeah.
science project, not I got all these agents that do all these great things, and they probably do. But do you have the context and the data and the foundations, the harness to basically, interact with that data, right? Not just in a reading kind of a way or an automation, but a real sort of back and forth, right? I've read it, I've standardized it, I've even automated it. Now I need to, run it. And as I run it, it's finding areas where it can be improved. And so can I go back and introduce or go do those things? Like, you don't just come up with an agent to just go do that per se. I mean, it has to interact with other things, right? and
Mm-hmm.
so and so sort of staring down at that problem set, right? Like that macro problem, before you get into like the very specific, let me build an agent that goes and solves cash forecasting or anomaly detection. Like, before I get to that,
Mm,
I have the foundation to actually be able to go do that meaningfully, where it matters and it impacts, workflows and operators, finance people, right?
mm,
Um, and so what I realized, which didn't take very long, was that all of these, software companies, SaaS or otherwise, similar to Zone, were sitting on really this treasure trove of data that we've already been interacting with to power and fuel some of the software that we've been, delivering out to our customers, right? At
mm, mm,
right? And so we're not the largest company in the world by any means, but 6,000 customers across the world is a lot of
mm,
customers, a
mm,
lot of data, and a lot of workflow, and quite frankly, a lot of context that we can now introduce to the agents and the skills and the workflows that we solve now through agents and AI. And so it was kind of staring down at how how impactful could we be if we went down this path of this agentic capability, given all the assets and treasures that we have amassed through many, many, many years. And then
mm.
it dawned on me that, oh my gosh, yeah, we have all of this, and we are working alongside of perhaps one of the largest systems of records that are out there, that's quite meaningful, right? And so then the what became really crystallized in terms of what we were sitting on and what we wanted to do. And then the how started to kind of, start to,
Percolate.
right, we started to really lean into that. And the hows became, okay, well, we can't do this the same way that we built all these other products, right? It's, you've got people that are vibe coding ideas, in days, and they might not be scalable, but the proof of concepts that used to take us weeks, if not months, to go do, people are kind of doing in slithers, in days, hours, or weeks for that matter, right?
Mm,
And talent. Here's another one. Talent that you want to find that are the best at what they do don't want to work in the ways that, we used to do things. And they want to interact in this way. And so they don't want to be stuck in some back room waiting for a product manager to come by and deliver a piece of paper that says, here are the requirements, now go build it, right?
Yeah,
They want to like interact with the software that, quite frankly, they're not writing the code by themselves. Now you've got, AI and agents writing this code for you. And like today, I think 95% of our code today is being written by AI in some
mm,
shape or form, which then frees up engineers to better understand workflows, to better understand problems, and to better, guardrail the things that we want AI to write code for us to go do, right? And so this interaction is now closer to the sun in terms of the problem sets, right? And
yeah,
so all of this had to change, and the organizations need to change alongside of it. And so at Zone, we sort of went through this schizophrenic, paranoid, you name it, sort of a transformation that we're not nearly complete on, but we're really
yeah.
proactive in achieving, which has really improved our margins. It's improved our time to value, how fast we introduce products out there. I mean, we used to do maybe a half a dozen releases a year. I think this year alone we did probably something like 40, right? Or
Yeah,
more,
yeah,
right? And so we had to undergo this transformation from, from what we were before, which was a transformation in itself, right? When I landed, it was largely about changing the company into a customer-centric company. And then once you got to that, it was changing the company into a customer-centric company that was a selling company, right?
yeah.
Focused on problems. And just when we got that right, AI landed, and now we're going through another transition, right? And so now we're trying to, in our own way, perfect this notion of doing more with less that every other company is also grappling with in terms of trying to achieve better profitability. And
Mm.
so now we've redefined our finance teams to now be more agentic alongside of the professionals that we've got there. We've now implemented agents in our implementation capabilities, where our products that are being pushed out are now being aided through AI, which is cutting
Mm.
down, implementations or time to value that our customers go through materially, right? What
Mm.
used to
Mm.
take, weeks or months is now taking days and hours, right? And so customers are getting products faster, right? And in addition to that, our salespeople are now, creating books of
Turbo
business and
powered.
pipeline faster. Our developers and product managers are innovating faster, and so it's kind of a really exciting time, Toby. I mean, when you
Totally
parse
agree.
through the the what do I call it? Sort of the absolutes, which is never really quite absolute. When you parse through that and you're trying to get to like, how can this stuff help? It's amazing. And I'm really
Mm.
excited for what's to come. Anyway, I went
I,
on a tangent, but that's kind of
no, not at all. No, and it's got me tangenting, this at the same sort of time, because I think there's a really important point you touched there, particularly around the engineers. I think, look, we can all see how, finance teams can be more productive based on the speed and the data and the information they get. We can definitely see that sales teams can have, more intelligence, better, precision, more fire support, etc., etc. And I think one of the things that people have been, looking at has been, the impact on engineers. You mentioned at the start of it that 95% of your code is, I think, if I'm not misquoting you, but 95% of your code is written by AI. And I think the natural, coming back to your maximalist or even the skeptic piece of that, means that displaces developers. And actually, I've been having more and more conversations recently about how that actually completely just changes the benefit. I go back to, me starting in the industry and seeing what a developer was, and it was a person who had headphones on, who didn't speak to anyone, and was a technologist in the corner, and they had zero business appreciation. I think what this now does is create genuine business technologists, and that's a really exciting thing to do and see as an evolution of that role itself. I've never thought this was about complete destruction and replacement. I think it's been about evolution and repatriation of skill sets that allow people to be better and more valuable from it. And I think that's probably what you were alluding to and what you were saying there as well, right?
Yeah, I'm hiring more developers and more product managers. Listen, I just got out of a board meeting not too long ago, and part of the conversation was, one of our board members, Richard, was like, you know, the whole notion of product managers is changing.
Mm,
Whole thing of engineers is changing, right? I mean,
yeah,
product managers, listen, I think product managers are 100% necessary. I think
yeah,
engineers are 100% necessary. It's
yeah,
just different,
yeah.
right? And it's faster. It's more
And
iterative,
cooler. It's a
and
better
it's
job.
cool, and it's cool. And I think they like it, quite
Yeah,
frankly,
yeah.
right? We're putting our finishing touches on our first new agentic product called Zone Liquidity, and it houses that very thing that I was giving you example on in terms of cash forecasting and scenario planning, right? And it's going to keep adding to it. But I have a, I believe it or not, I have a 10 to 15 minute daily stand up with the lead product manager on that product, the lead engineer, and we go and the head of technology and the head of product, and we go through that every single day for 10 minutes, and we talk about which customers are actually lined up, or that are engaged in like giving the feedback to the engineer and the product manager. How's that going? What feedback is coming back? And every single day they're coming back with, more things that customers are that have engaged in that product are saying they need to see this ability, for POs and sales, and they need to be able to have the data look like this, and it needs to go back and forth between NetSuite and Zone, and they're iterating and looping really fast.
Mm, mm,
And
mm,
every single day that we sit down and have this 10-15 minute call, there's something new that's popped up, or a new customer that they're planning on exposing the next iteration, not even a release, right?
mm,
The next iteration too, right? And it's been that transformation internally, engineers and product managers, but it's also been a little bit of transformation on how we speak to our customers and how we train them on how to step through this, because we said it before, they don't really quite know what they need or want in the beginning. They don't really quite know how that needs to look. They're naturally skeptical, or as they
mm,
should be, because some of these things hallucinate, right? I mean,
mm.
some of these things hallucinate and do things they
Well, it
shouldn't do,
goes back to that approximately right not being good enough piece that we were talking about before.
right?
That's the skepticism's natural. Yeah.
Right. And now that we've built this harness that is connected to the system of record in that read standardized right way, you can't have, agents and AI hallucinating things back into their system of record that basically deteriorates, right? That precision that, quite frankly, these operators require in order to do their jobs right. I mean, $1 million off, a decimal in a wrong place, a phantom customer that's now my biggest customer. you
It's
know,
not a good story. Not a good look.
right? It doesn't bode well, right? For, more or less a publicly traded company that now
Yeah.
relies on this stuff, right? And so all of this is evolving, to your point, and we've had to, not in addition to retraining and hiring talent and evolving, those roles, we're also going through the same exercise with our customers in the sense of, we get it. You don't
Mm,
really quite know yet. So let me give you iterations of things that we're working on. Come join us in that journey. You may learn something about what you actually need, right? And then you'll have a little bit more of a bird's eye view on how this is being architected and built. And you can very quickly touch it, feel it, play with it, and determine whether or not, it sounded cool, but not really, or holy cow, I really need this, right? And I think that's been the fun part of it, because not too long ago we didn't have the luxury of that, not really.
yeah.
you had user groups and what have you, but because you had lots of developers, tethering lots of modules together to go do things, it really was hard to go do that in a meaningful way a lot of times. And
Mm.
at best, you could bring 50, 100, 200 customers together and strip these things through in big sort of increments, right? So every 3 months, I'll show you something, and that's just not the case anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's mind blowing about the opportunities, and I've just had a casual look up to the top of my screen and realised that I've done a horrible job in keeping this to the half-hour slot that I'm supposed to keep it to, and it's I mentioned I was boasting to you beforehand about 700 odd episodes and how many of these we've done, and one of the things has been keeping it on time. But there's occasional episodes where I just throw myself into it, and I get so swept up in just the beauty of the conversation. And this has been one of those. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and time's run away from us. So whilst I could be speaking for another 2 hours with you, I'm gonna finalise it with one last question, and that's a little bit of a crystal ball to look forward. So you've mentioned there about rapid evolution. You've mentioned there about innovation and iteration at various different stages, and you've spoken about the evolution of Zone over that sort of period. So we're here and hurtling towards the end of the summer already. It's September's a couple of weeks away as we're filming at the moment. Tell us what the rest of 2026 looks like for Zone and for the industry, and what you're sort of crystal balling to happen over that sort of period, as you say, we continue to evolve and move. And then also, as we look ahead to 2027, which we've kind of got to do almost immediately now anyway, what do you think we'll see, and what's exciting for you in the business?
Yeah. And so if I zoom out, I think in 2026, um, I think the pace at which customers are starting to figure out what's meaningful to them is picking up. I think it's getting faster, they're getting a better sense. And I think that their desires and needs to now experiment or challenge current workflows with better, faster ways of doing things is going to blow up. It's already, you're already seeing, the interest. I would say the interest is blowing up right now. I think as you certainly exit 2026, it's more than an interest and more now, folks actually touching things. And in
Mm,
2027, I think it's now they've touched enough, and now they're picking their champions on what they want to use alongside of products they require or alongside of products that they have deprecated in light of new. What you should expect from Zone, or what Zone will look like in 2026 and onwards, is in lockstep with that, right?
mm,
And so we've spent a lot of time building this AI harness called Zoe. That is coming pretty much to its completion. We have now, as a result of that, in parallel, have started building skills inside of legacy products, and creating new agentic products that complement the end-to-end workflow platform that we've created. And so we're basically tying these workflows together, and we're doing one thing more, which is we are tying these workflows together and connecting them, bolting them on through the harness to the system of record, right?
mm,
And in doing so, you're going to see us, introducing things like Zone Liquidity, which is cash management, scenario planning, forecasting, to things like Zone Receivables, which is, receiving how you're receiving cash from your customers, Dunnings, collections,
mm,
payments. We're bringing together that quote to revenue, and tethering that to procure to pay, to tethering that to treasury, and to bringing all that together to record to report. And we're creating all of that is sitting alongside of or on top of this AI harness that is connecting to the ERP, and we're bringing that intelligence and that agent layer on top of these capabilities and these systems of records. And we're going to keep doing that, and we're going to keep transforming the company in that way. 2026 is really where it's going to kind of boom for us in terms of how we're interacting with our customers in that way. And in 2027 is going to be, I think, it locks up with what I said of they're gonna now start to see how the harness connects and how you're able to now have teams of agents and skilled sort of capabilities alongside of humans that are now tasked at going doing this stuff. And that's what I would expect, it to be. And in terms of like what to look forward for in the industry, I think it's more of that, right?
Yeah.
It's really, bringing, real tangent, capabilities that really matter versus theoretical science projects with a lot of promises to do a lot of things, but that don't really do those things because they lack the boring stuff, right?
Mm.
That is required in order to basically be relevant in being able to deliver some of these services. And so I'll cut myself off right there. I'll keep going on my, but that's kind of how
I love it, and I totally agree with you. And I think that's sort of your final piece there about the the dancing around the handbags that we've been talking about for a little while, where people have been so close to be doing it and prophesizing and playing with various different areas, now to where you're seeing actual physical action is so exciting. I think you use the word transformation there, and I think seeing businesses transform and be so excitable about what they can do and where they can go makes it just a phenomenal place. So if people want to find out a little bit more about this and get in touch with you, get in touch with the business, what's the best way for them to do that?
They go to our website, www.zoneandco.com. There's all the resources that we put out there in terms of what we're doing and what we're seeing. And reach out. All the contact information is there.
I'd highly recommend as well a LinkedIn follow, because the content that's coming out of that is superb, and it is thought provoking. It is everything that I thought this conversation would be. So whilst I have allowed us to go on a little bit further than we usually do on the show, it's been well worth it. It's been a fantastic conversation. Love the business, love what you're doing. It's great to speak to you again. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Toby.
Absolute pleasure. And thank you all for watching. We will see you soon on the next episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.